It was a Tuesday morning when I found the shirt. Blue Oxford, faint cologne still clinging to the collar. Not mine. Folded like an afterthought on the top shelf of our bedroom closet. I stared at it for a good 5 seconds before pulling it down, checking the tag, feeling the unfamiliar stitching. Size large. I wear medium. I waited. I didn't accuse her that night. Instead, I asked about the move, how it went, if her friend Melissa showed up like she promised. My wife, Dana, barely looked up from her pasta. It was fine, she said. Actually, Lucas helped. Lucas, the one with the sleeve tattoo? I asked, as if I didn't already know. She nodded, twirling her fork. Yeah, he happened to be free, so he carried the heavy stuff. Casual, clean, unbothered. Like I was supposed to thank him for donating his biceps to our life. I sipped my wine, smiled faintly. Did he carry this too? I dropped the shirt beside her plate. She froze. Her fork paused midair. A thin strand of spaghetti slid off and coiled on the table like a dropped wire. That's not his, she said. I didn't reply. I just stared. And in that quiet, the entire room filled with something heavier than words. She went defensive fast. Maybe it's your brother's. He stayed here last month, remember? My brother lives on the opposite coast. He hasn't visited in 2 years. Well, maybe it's from the dry cleaners, one of those mix-ups. Funny, I said, since we don't dry clean anything. You hate the smell. There's a certain look people give when they know the room has turned. When the lie doesn't land, and their brain scrambles for a softer fall. She gave me that look. It's just a shirt, Rob. But it wasn't. It was a breach. I didn't fight her. I didn't yell or storm out. I just nodded and said I needed some air. Out on the porch, I pulled up Lucas's Instagram. Private. Still following Dana. She wasn't following him back. I checked her phone later. Turns out she'd muted his posts months ago, probably to look clean in case I ever peeked. That's the thing about betrayal. The smart ones don't delete the messages. They bury them under silence. The next day, I left work early. I called Melissa, her supposed moving buddy. Hey, I said. Dana told me you helped her move some boxes Sunday? Melissa hesitated. I was out of town. My sister's baby shower. Right, I said. Makes sense. Why? No reason. I hung up before she could dig. That night, I came home to dinner already made. Dana wore that soft smile she uses when she wants to reset the mood. Hair tied up, sleeves rolled. Chicken marsala. My favorite. I sat down. Ate. Pretended. She thought it was over. That maybe I'd swallowed the story. But something had shifted. Not just between us, inside me. I started watching her closely. When her phone lit up in the bathroom, I memorized the notification names. Taylor, Morgan, Jay. Genderless aliases for late-night pings. One time I saw L. Just L. I let it go on for another 2 weeks. During that time, I made a few changes. Quietly pulled my name from her boutique's business license. Changed the passwords to our shared savings. Transferred just enough money into a separate account to avoid suspicion. She noticed none of it. She was too busy posting reels of coffee mugs and books on rain-drenched windowsills. Those fake cozy vibes influencers used to bury the truth. Then, one morning, I called Lucas. I didn't expect him to answer. But he did. Yeah. Hey, Rob. Dana's husband. Silence. I kept going. I found your shirt. He didn't hang up. I figured, he said after a pause. Look, nothing happened. I helped her move a desk. That's it. And left your shirt in our closet? She said she'd return it. She didn't. He exhaled. Listen, man. I didn't mean to cause anything. It was innocent. I wanted to believe that. But I'd lived too long in the illusion of innocence. After I hung up, I didn't tell Dana about the call. I just waited. I wanted to see if she'd confess. Give me even a shard of the truth. She didn't. Instead, she planned a weekend getaway. A little reset, she said. Just us. Somewhere quiet. I agreed. We drove up to a cabin in Lakewood, 4 hours out. Forest. Fireplace. No cell service. She thought it was a romantic gesture. I watched her sip wine by the fire, blanket pulled tight, eyes soft. And I realized something. She wasn't scared. She was confident I'd let it go. That was her mistake. I waited until she was asleep, then opened her phone using the face recognition trick I'd practiced for weeks. There it was. A folder labeled work. Inside, screenshots of Airbnb messages. Lucas's name in the threads. One of them said, "You left your shirt, LOL." Another, Don't forget to delete these. She hadn't. The next morning, I made coffee. Bacon, eggs, toast. She smiled through it all. You okay? She asked. Never better, I said. I waited until we got home to start the real work. First, I copied the messages. All of them. Forwarded them to a new email account, one she didn't know existed. Then I began the process of unspooling our life. Quietly, precisely. I called my lawyer, updated the estate documents, began drafting a divorce plan she'd never see coming. No confrontation. No dramatic showdown. Just leverage. Control. Power, when reclaimed, doesn't roar. It whispers. And she wouldn't hear a damn thing until it was too late. By week 3, Dana had no idea she was sleeping next to a man who'd already filed the first set of papers. The divorce plan was simple. No drama. No confrontation. Just strategic exit. I wasn't going to scream or expose. I was going to leave her with nothing but the echo of my silence. Our house was in both our names, but I'd bought it with my money, every cent. She had a boutique she couldn't run without the suppliers I'd introduced, the lease I negotiated, and the silent financial backing I'd fed monthly, without her ever asking where the funds came from. So I turned off the faucet. Quietly, professionally, ruthlessly. I scheduled a meeting with our accountant. Told him Dana had requested full control of the boutique's financials, and I was just stepping back. He raised an eyebrow. I told him it was her idea, show of independence. He nodded, made the changes. Then I withdrew my silent investment from her wholesaler's main distributor, a logistics group I'd quietly bought a minority share in last year. Just enough to cause shipping delays. Just enough to rattle her routine. By the time her inventory order failed to show, Dana was on edge. That Friday night, she came home flustered, dropped her purse too hard on the counter. Can you believe these idiots lost half the shipment? She snapped. I had clients waiting on pre-orders. I feigned concern. You want me to call someone? Maybe I can help. She waved me off. No, I'll fix it. She wouldn't. Not in time. I forwarded a batch of those deleted Airbnb messages to her boutique's business email. Anonymous sender. No message. Just screenshots. I knew her assistant checked that inbox on Mondays. 3 days later, the assistant quit. On Tuesday, Dana received an email from her landlord. Lease renewal in 30 days. This time without the preferential rate I'd negotiated behind the scenes. She'd never read the fine print. She assumed it would just roll over. Meanwhile, I was working from hotels, quietly moving accounts, closing shared credit cards, creating digital distance. The kind that doesn't show until the statement arrives and everything feels wrong at once. One night, she climbed into bed next to me and laid her head on my chest like nothing had changed. Everything's been so stressful, she whispered. I'm glad you're here. That almost got to me. Almost. But then her phone buzzed. Just once. She didn't move. I waited until she fell asleep, then checked it. Nothing on the lock screen. Of course, just a name. Jay. Again. Inside was a message. Tell Rob yet? Or still playing house? She hadn't even blocked him. At that point, I knew she wasn't sorry. Not even cautious. She believed she still had control. That was what I had to destroy, without touching her, without yelling, without ever raising my voice. So I booked a dinner. The kind she loved, rooftop, dim lighting, expensive wine. I told her we were celebrating her boutique's 3rd year. She dressed in red. Lipstick sharp, hair curled the way she knew I liked. She held my hand across the table. Smiled like a woman who thought she'd won. Midway through the 2nd course, I handed her an envelope. She looked confused. What's this? Gift, I said. For you. She opened it slowly. The color drained from her face. Inside were 2 documents. The termination letter from her supplier, effective immediately, and the printouts of her Airbnb messages with Lucas. She glanced up. Mouth parted. Words struggling to form. Happy anniversary, I said. Her voice cracked. Rob. I held up a hand. Don't. Not here. She folded the papers with trembling fingers. You've been tracking me? No. I just stopped trusting you. The waiter brought dessert. Neither of us touched it. That night, she followed me out to the car in silence. I drove us home. Parked. Sat with the engine running. I don't understand, she said quietly. You didn't even ask. You didn't try to talk. Because talking assumes we're still partners, I replied. She started crying, head in her hands. It didn't mean anything. I nodded. That's why it was so easy. I didn't go inside. I left her standing in the driveway and checked into a hotel downtown. My suitcase was already in the trunk. I hadn't packed in front of her. I'd planned it 2 days earlier. Control isn't yelling. It's removing yourself so fast and so clean, the other person has no one left to blame. The next morning, I made the final call. My lawyer filed the divorce with full asset protection clauses already in place. Thanks to the evidence I'd compiled, infidelity was clear. I was walking away with the house, the car, and full separation of all funds. She wouldn't see it until the envelope arrived at her boutique, if it was still open by then. And Lucas? I didn't touch him. I didn't have to. Turns out, his wife found out a week later. Funny how digital receipts travel faster than secrets. By the end of the month, Dana's world was collapsing in slow motion. Boutique? Gone. Lease terminated. Reputation? Smeared by whispers in her circle. Lucas? Out of her life again, this time dragged down by the weight of his own exposed affair. And me? I was already gone. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Not until the final move landed. And that came next. 3 weeks after the papers landed, Dana finally called. Blocked number. I let it ring 4 times before answering. You win, she said. No hello. No preamble. I wasn't playing, I replied. There was a pause. Then, I can't pay next month's rent. The boutique's closed. Suppliers pulled out. Investors walked. I'm aware. Another pause, longer this time. You did this. No, I said. You did. I just watched. She started crying. Quiet at first. Then sharp, erratic. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you fight for us? I laughed once. Cold. Controlled. You don't fight to rebuild a house that's already been hollowed out by termites. You walk away before it collapses. She kept talking. Apologies. Deflections. Sentences that began with, I was confused, and ended with, it didn't mean anything. But I wasn't there for closure. I stayed on the line long enough to let her hear how calm I was. How whole I sounded. Then I said what needed to be said. You lied. You let another man into the space we built. Then you kept lying, even after you knew I knew. That's not confusion. That's character. She didn't reply. I hung up. After that, I wiped my hands of her. There were still logistics, title transfers, tax records, the formal property reassignment. But emotionally, I was done. The last thread I needed to cut was public. A week later, I sat down with an old friend, Mark, a digital consultant I'd worked with years ago. I handed him a folder, thick with screenshots and legal paperwork. Cleanly, I said, no names, no slander, just facts. 3 days later, a story hit the blogosphere. When betrayal comes home, a silent partner's revenge. Anonymously published, carefully worded, with names scrubbed, but anyone who knew us would recognize the players. And the facts? Bulletproof. The story went viral in our circles. Her boutique community, filled with curated smiles and filtered brunches, ate it alive. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were commentary, public and unrelenting. And Dana? She vanished. Deleted socials. Closed accounts. Moved out of town. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Some people chase closure. Others craft it. I rebuilt in silence. Moved to a high-rise across the city. New view. New number. New rules. My life was leaner now, no unnecessary weight. The peace that comes from walking away with your dignity intact is a quiet kind of power most people never experience. They think power is loud. It's not. It's knowing you had every reason to explode, and you didn't. 6 months later, I ran into Lucas. He looked smaller, older, worn out in a way that didn't match his age. Rob, he said, startled. I nodded. Lucas. I didn't know she was still married when I cut him off. You did. He swallowed. Yeah. I waited. I lost my wife. Kids barely talked to me. Job let me go. I didn't say I was sorry. I wasn't. You know, he said, forcing a weak smile. You're different. From before. I am. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He just nodded and walked off into the crowd. That was the last time I saw anyone from that chapter of my life. Now, when I open my closet, every shirt belongs to me. There are no ghosts in the seams. No strangers' scent hanging in the fabric. Just clean lines. Sharp choices. Peace earned, not gifted. Because the truth is, revenge doesn't need fire. Sometimes all it takes is a folded shirt and a man patient enough to wait for everything to unravel exactly how it should.